Hello everybody, Math 11 Quarter 1 Week 4 lesson plan. So let's go right into Math 11 Quarter 1 Week 4 lesson plans. And we got a PowerPoint edition and we got a video edition here, Week 4 lesson plan. Students, name, date here on your acceptance sheet. Let's go right. And going into Quarter 1, Math 11, Week 4. Let's see what's on the agenda for Week 4. Here it is here. So it's 1.95, Chapter 1A, Quadratic Functions, Review and Summary, Classwork Part 4, and Part 5, Classwork Part 4 and 5. And then we go on to Quadratic Functions, Review and Summary, Homework Part 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we do our test after the review and summaries. And then we go into chapter 2.1, use property of exponents, classwork homework part 1, part 2. Then we go into 2.2, evaluate and graph polynomial functions, classwork homework part 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so that's on the agenda for week 4. And then here's our test, classwork part 1, part 2, algebra 2, chapter 1. It's a 2-part test, so it'll take 2 separate sessions for that. And then here it is that again. And then our intro, do we have an intro? Well, here's our standards for chapter 1. This is what we covered in the last 3 weeks. Are these standards. And then here's a biggie here, Rn.1, explain how definition of the meaning of rational exponents follows from extending the properties of integer exponents to those values, allowing for a notation for radicals in terms of rational exponents. So we learn how to do that. And that's Rn.1. That's your intro here. We've been covering that since way back here in week 2. And then we have Common Core 9 through 12, FIF.7. This is chapter 2 here, graph function. Where's my blow up here? So it's FIF.7, graph functions expressed symbolically and show key features of the graph by hand in simple cases, and use technology for more complicated cases. And then our learning targets, add, subtract, and multiply. Complex numbers, we get into complex numbers in chapter 2. Use the identity I squared equals -1 to simplify expressions. Apply the commutative, associative, and distributive properties to complex number operations. And more learning targets. APR.1, understand that polynomials form a system analogous to integers, namely they are closed under the operations of addition, subtraction, and multiplication. Add, subtract, and multiply polynomials. So we will get into that in chapter 2. And then as per usual, animated PowerPoints and video versions of lesson, classwork, homework, quiz, test, worksheets are all animated PowerPoints and video. And then activities and tasks. All classwork sheets are closed exercise from PowerPoints or MP4s. Homework, quizzes, and test assignments available online with corrections provided after submission dates. And access for all, available in over 100 languages, available online 24/7, closed caption for hearing impaired, audio for sight impaired. And then classwork points is 225 for week 4. Note taking is 140 points in note taking. Homework is 693 points of homework. No quizzes. We have 157 points in tests. And the total for week 4 is 1,215 points for week 4. So it's a very large week. and modifications, accommodations. Week 4, available online via Google Classroom interface. That is grades, classwork, homework, quizzes, tests, Zoom tutoring on request. All available through your Google Classroom. And then we start out here with our chapter and summary, part 1, classwork, 26 points, 12 points in note-taking. Part 2, chapter summary, chapter 1, 20 points, 30 points in note-taking. Part 3, classwork, 20 points, again, 16 points in note-taking. And then we got a part 4 here, classwork, 20 points of classwork, 16 points again for part 4. Part 5, 22 points of classwork. And then we finally get into homework here for chapter 1, review and summary, 82 points of homework for part 1, review and summary for chapter 1. Part 2 of homework is 89 points, chapter 1. Then part 3 is 41 points of homework for part 3, chapter 1, review and summary. And then parts 4 and 5, homework, 76 points, 10 points in note-taking. For parts 4 and 5, chapter 1, review and summary. And then our test, finally, our test, chapter 1 test, is 76 points for part 1, chapter 1 test. And then chapter 1 test, part 2, 81 points for part 2, chapter 1 test. And then we go into 2.1, use properties of exponents. And we got a different standard here, endpoint Rn. 1, 22 points classwork, 17 points in note-taking. And it's this standard here, Common Core 9 to 12, endpoint Rn. 1. Explain how the definition of the meaning of rational exponents follows from extending the properties of integer exponents to those values, allowing for a notation for radicals in terms of rational exponents. And then 2.1, part 1 homework, we got 72 points of homework and 17 points of note-taking for part 1, 2.1 homework. Part 1, 72 points of homework. Then we got part 2. We go into part 2 classwork, 22 points. And then 4 points excuse me, of note-taking, part 2 classwork. And then we go into 2.1, part 2 homework, 111 points on your homework for part 2, 2.1. This is after your test, so. And then we go into our learning targets here. And again, it's endpoint Rn. 1. Explain how the definition of the meaning of rational exponents follows from extending the properties of integer exponents to those values, allowing for a notation for radicals in terms of rational exponents. And then we move on here to 2.2, part 1 classwork, 32 points, 14 points of note taken. We go into FIF now for 2.2. And 2.2, part 1 homework, 68 points of homework. Then 2.2, part 2 classwork is 21 points. And this is your FIF point 7. Graph functions expressed symbolically and show key features of the graph by hand in simple cases, and using technology for more complicated cases. 2.2 part 2 homework is 45 points for part 2. 2.2 evaluating graph polynomial functions. And then we go part 3 classwork, which is 20 points, 21 points in note taking. Again, more FIF here, part 3, 2.2. And then 2.2 part 3 homework is 99 points. And for your homework of part 3 for 2.2. So we're on our way here, 2.2 and Anime PowerPoint Math video at AOL.com for questions, course materials. Thank you very much.